evaluation advice. No one should act on such information without appropriate professional advice after a thorough examination of the particular situation. If you have questions for the presenters, please use the Q&A tool at the bottom of the Zoom platform. They will get to as many questions as they can throughout and at the end of the presentation. We will provide a copy of the slides and a link to the recording to all attendees post-event. And finally, if you are looking to receive CPE, Continuing Professional Education credits for attending today's session, you'll need to be active in the Zoom platform for a minimum of 50 minutes and answer 3 of the 4 polling questions that will appear on the screen at random points during the presentation. Each poll will be active for about 1 minute. There are no right or wrong answers, but be sure to select an answer and click submit for tracking purposes. And now I will pass it over to Buu-Linh Tran, Vice President of Financial Solutions at Marcum Technology.
Thank you so much, Erin, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on Sage Intacct. This is the 2022 R4 release, What You Should Know. This should be a good session. I'm just wanted to give you a heads up. This is going to be a more technical sessions. I know we do a lot of sessions on Sage Intacct and a number of solutions. This is going to be a little bit more technical. And just a quick background on myself. I've been with the organizations for over 18 years, approaching 19. I've been in this industry over 25 years, supporting clients on various ERP solutions. The ERP solution that we will be presenting today is Sage Intacct. And I have also worked with a number of FP&A solutions, which are, budgeting, forecasting and analysis applications as well. Besides Sage Intacct, I also have a number of years of experience supporting the Microsoft Dynamics products, specifically Great Plains. So that's just a quick intro. Troy, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you. Troy Miner, been with the firm for about 15 years now. Of course, I support Sage Intacct as well as Microsoft Dynamics GP, and I support one of our budgeting systems as well, and I provide training and implementation services.
Right. So our focus today is on 2022 R4 highlights. Most of this presentation will be in the software, but we have some slides that we're going to be transitioning back and forth. But we wanted to maybe just do a quick intro on who we are as Marcum and Marcum Technology. I will say that for today's presentation, Troy is really doing most of the heavy lifting here to go through the new functionality of the system. So quickly, who are we? Who is Marcum and Marcum Technology? Next slide, please. So just a little bit background on the firm. Marcum Technology is the technology arm of Marcum LLP, which is the CPA firm. So as a firm overall, we have over 2,600, I think it's now closer to 3,000 employee. We are now, I realize it's a little bit old. We are actually 12th largest CPA firm in the US. And below here, you can see that we do cover a number of industries. I'm not going to go through all of this, but we do work with, both Troy and I work with clients in various industries. Next slide, please. So if you can take just a few seconds to answer the polling questions for your CPE. This is a CPE credited webinar. So really quick in terms of the offering that Marcum Tech offers to our client, and I'll go through this fairly quickly. So first item on the top is cloud and infrastructure solution. So in here, we provide services to our client in areas of infrastructure, as well as project planning, telecom optimization, So I'm not going to go through all of them, but those are the areas that we support from a cloud infrastructure perspective. Then we also provide managed IT services. So with organizations that want to really focus on the core of the business and not really worry too much about the infrastructure and help desk support and all of that, they outsource that function to Marcum as well. So there's a number of services that's listed there in terms of the managed IT services. Next, we have cybersecurity and digital forensic. We have a huge team at Marcum Tech, really specialized in safeguarding our clients' operations. And providing services in the area of cybersecurity, disaster recovery, pen testing, and all of that. So that's cybersecurity. And then we've got digital consulting. So digital consulting is the area that both Troy and myself are part of. And there's a number of areas within digital consulting. One of which, it's the last bullet there that is in blue, is financial ERP and FP&A solutions. And even within financial ERP solution, we do a lot of different applications. So really quickly, we support 4 ERP solutions, and they are Sage Intacct, 2 of which are cloud-based. So Sage Intacct, Acumatica, and then we support 2 Dynamics products of Microsoft Dynamics, and that is Dynamics GP, which used to be called Great Plains, and in Dynamics SL for Solomon. Alongside that, we also implement and support a number of FP&A solutions. So many of our clients, need to budget. I think pretty much all organizations budget at some level, but so clients have come to us and needing a solution to help them manage the entire budget process. So the FP&A solutions that we support are Planful as well as Vena. These are great solutions. We also support a budgeting solutions. I wouldn't consider them FP&A, but it is definitely a budgeting solution, and we have a lot of success with that, and that is Martis. Martis has a direct integration with Sage Intacct. And the other area of digital consulting, we do a lot with robotic process automation, blockchain, cryptocurrency, and a couple of other items here. And then lastly is strategic consulting. So organizations that come to us wanting to needing to do a sort of an overview of their operations and the tech stack that they have, and wanting to, an independence review of how they could optimize their back office operations. So we do a lot of assessments for a client in terms of reviewing their back office operation. And that's part of strategic consulting. So next slide, please. So I'm gonna hand this over to Troy to go through the R4 release. Troy.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk about primarily about 4 areas there's been some enhancements in. It's going to be budget and planning. We're going to talk about enhancement in accounts payable, order entry, payroll, believe it or not, and then something called columns in motion, which is an enhancement in the user experience. So let's jump into the software.
And Troy, maybe I know there's a questions that people have about, sort of the budget that is part of the core and the budget and planning. What is the difference between the two?
That is actually where I'm starting. So
that's great.
So on this window here, many of you are probably familiar with this screen here. This is the budget repository window that comes with the core Sage Intacct product. And calling it a repository, originally it was just called budgets or budgeting, and then they renamed it and called it budgets repository, which is more appropriate because it is a place to store your budget numbers. That is what some people used to refer to as bucket technology. It's just a place to put some numbers that you can recall back later in terms of reports, but there's no functionality, behind it. There's some structure behind it based upon the way that you actually put the data in, but there's no associated functionality with it. It's just data put there that you can retrieve back later. And so, as you probably already know, you can have as many versions as of the budgets that you like. You can actually go into the budget details. And even here, you can see, your various dimensions. But if you want to see the numbers behind the budgets, you actually have to go into an individual line. So if I want to look at this revenue line here for this food operations, to see the detail behind it, so the budget numbers by month, I actually have to go into that particular record. There is no way to scroll from this record to the next record. I actually have to leave this record in order to go into another record to see the details, of another combination of the dimensions in the natural GL account. So it does work. And so, for organizations that are using this, typically your budget is either still in your head and you need to, of course, put it in the Sage Intacct, in which case you can come in here and manually enter it, or your budget is in Excel, in which case you can import it into Sage Intacct. Once the budgets are loaded into Sage Intacct, of course, they can be used with your standard financial reports that you've already built. And again, you can pull data from multiple versions of the budget into your standard report. So that's what you all have as part of the core product. Sage also has a separate add-on product called Sage Intacct Budget and Planning. And it is tightly integrated with Sage Intacct Financials. And that's the only thing that it does is integrate with Sage Intacct in terms of helping you get your budget constructed or built. The difference between this product, this add-on, and the core product is that this product is a little more intuitive in terms of the data that you're viewing. When we were in the regular financials product, you had to go line by line. You'd actually drill into a line to see the details. This product is different. This add-on is different. Also, you kind of have to have somewhat of a background from an accounting perspective to understand how to actually get that data in there correctly. Whereas this add-on product, Intacct Planning and Budget, is different. Also, the Intacct Planning and Budget product allows you to collaborate, so multiple people can actually provide input into the budget. One of the things that you'll notice when you first go into here, I'm looking at a budget called USA, and I can see I have a top line, which is the entity name. And when I'm have the focus on that entity name, I can see the net effects of all my budget lines. So I can see that my change in net assets or my net income by month and for the whole year of 3.9 million. That's something you cannot do in the budget module or budget repository in Sage Intacct. If I click on the revenue line, I can see my revenues by month. I can also see the total. I can do the same thing with cost of revenues as well. And if I want to see the detail lines that roll up, I can expand this cost of revenue and I can see the various detail lines such as direct labor, if there's a variance, and if there's administrative costs and the other costs. So this right here, just this, in my opinion, makes the product 10 times better than what you get out of the box with the core products, because this is a little more intuitive versus in the product itself, the core product, it's data. Here, you're actually getting information. Here, you can actually see what my total cost of revenues are instead of a bunch of just line items, a bunch of numbers. Likewise, I can expand operational expenses and see what my various expense amounts are. When it comes to doing data entry, I have a couple of options I can actually use to actually populate the data. And it kind of guides you through it. And so if I want to update the consulting line, I have the option of recording how frequently do I need to record these expenses or budget for them. Is it once? Is it monthly, quarterly, or yearly? Also, is it the same amount each month, a different amount each month, or if it's a growth amount? If I want it to be a different amount each month, when I toggle, then it presents me with all the months and I can key in whichever amount I want. If I wanted to use growth, I can specify that the amount is, $10,000. And I can also specify that I wanted to grow, by a certain amount, and it will automatically increment, so here I put 10%. So it's going up 10% each month for me. So I have those various options from data entry perspective. Also here, we have an expensing period where it allows you to allocate these expenses across multiple months if you have a need to do that. And then there's also an option here for payment. And what this is used for is you can actually record when you actually think you need to pay these expenses. So you may incur the expense in January, but you may not pay that expense until March. The reason, and this is optional, but the reason that it gives you that prompt is so that it can help you with cash forecasting. So in this example here, we have a January 23 budget expense amount of $10,000. There's a report in here that allows you to see your cash forecast. It will show the cash outflow in March. So it kind of helps you forecast what your cash outflows will be. Also on the revenue side, it will prompt you for when do you think you'll receive payment for your revenues. And so that'll represent a cash inflow, and those two combined together can help you estimate your cash. An enhancement in release 4 is this option here for grid entry. So when I click on grid entry, it changes the layout so I can enter the data just like I was entering it in Excel, worksheet. So as Buu-Linh mentioned, we have a couple of FP&A solutions that we implement, as well as some just straight budget solution. And when we're speaking with prospects and clients, we always get our users don't like a whole lot of change. They prefer doing Excel because it's what they've always done. So a lot of times we'll get comments like, well, anything that's close to Excel or Excel-like is what we prefer. So Sage Intacct heard that, and so they now, as of this current release R4 2022, you now have this grid here that's kind of Excel-like, where the user can actually go in and enter the dollar amount themselves. So that's a new enhancement, and that's pretty big because this particular product has been out for a few years, but they just finally released this option here in R4 2022. And again, this is a tool that's designed to help you build your budget. It's not just to store your budget, it's help you build it. And once you've constructed your budget in this product, there's an option here which allow you to sync up to Sage Intacct. And what happens is it takes your budget that you have here and it pushes it over into your Sage Intacct budget repository. And then you can take advantage of the reports you already have that pull budget numbers to actually access this budget data here, because now it's over in the Sage Intacct financials product. Some other items I'd like to show you here. With this grid entry option turned on, I can actually see the main headings or main categories of this particular budget in the P&L format. I can see, my bottom line here is kind of funny because it's at the top, but I can see what the net effect of my revenues, cost of revenues, operation expenses, and other income expenses. I can see all of that right here on this particular screen, which again, this is more informational as opposed to the core product, which is, just pretty much raw data. In this product as well, there's also some predefined dashboards for you. And those dashboards has filters. You can filter for budget. They have interactive dashboard. You can filter on location or entity. You can filter on your other Sage Intacct dimensions, based depending on how you budget. So in this particular instance, they're budgeting by location and project. There's also what's called sheets, and these are basically predefined reports for you. And so here's the P&L report. It resembles the budget input window. Here, we're looking at the budget. You can look at it monthly, quarterly, or yearly. Here, It's just the numbers in whole dollars, thousands or millions. Again, you have a location dimension, a project dimension, as well as a category dimension, and you can filter it for a particular account as well. Here's a P&L, there's a balance sheet for you. And then there's this area here called bookings. And bookings really is basically taking a snapshot of your budgeted revenues. And it allows you to see just the revenues off by itself. And in this particular product, it just refers to it as bookings because it's like planned revenue. If you're going to use head counts or things like that to help drive your budget, you can actually bring over employee data out of Sage Intacct. So there's an employee dimension in the product. Some of you may be using it if you're using time and expense, but it's there that you can use it even on journal entries if you wanted to. You can actually bring that employee data over so that you can use head counts and to help you with your budgeting. So maybe you budget travel by head count, and you may want to estimate that for every employee, there's maybe $1,000 worth of travel during the year or $2,000, what have you. So you can use that to kind of help drive it as well. But back on the inputs tab which is where we actually update the budget. Let me show you some additional things here. In this consulting item here, I'm going to go back to the old view. Not only do I have the date range, I have default dimensions here. I also have this option here where I can specify whether it's depreciation expense or not. And it's asking me this because it will know in the cash forecast report whether or not to ignore this expense, because depreciation expense doesn't affect your cash as well. And then there's an option here to put comments. So I can actually insert comments here into this particular line consulting in my operational expenses. So this tool here, again, is available as an add-on. We'd love to do a full demo for you. In terms of the collaboration, you can invite users to participate in the budget process. Basically, put in an email address, specify if they can view or modify whether or not they can see personnel data, which reports they can see. You can specify which budget they see. And so, again, it's a collaborative tool that will help you build your budget instead of just some place to store your data. So let's jump over. So again, the enhancement here with this product, though, is that you now have that grid view, which lets you view the data as if it was an Excel worksheet. And you can also input the data that way. You can also update the data here via an Excel file as well.
Just a quick comment about the budget. And I actually see this a lot, especially users that came from the Dynamics, like Dynamics GP, then transition over to Sage Intacct. What I see often is clients would create a budget for every year. So they'll have like a budget ID for, let's say, 2020 and one for 2021, 2022. And that, that's actually not necessary, because a budget can hold multiple years of budgets. And so, as a matter of fact, when you're in reporting, you'll reference a budget ID. And if you have a budget for every year, you have to then every year go into your report and update, okay, I'm running 2020 this year, and then having to change again when you run 2021. So just to keeping things simple, you just need one budget ID, and you can just load the data, whether it's here or you're loading from Excel, into that budget.
So the next item I wanted to talk about is accounts payable. There's been an enhancement in accounts payable, and you may not see it yet. It's being phased in. So there's a subset of the user community who already has this product turned on for them, and they will be continuing rolling it out in 2023. And basically, it's bill automation. Because it's phased out, we don't even actually have it yet, but it's bill automation. And so basically what you're doing now is you're either keying your bills in, or you may be loading them into a template and importing the bills in. What the bill automation is going to do for you, it's going to pre-populate those fields on the bill entry window. So the way that there's two ways the bill can get into Sage Intacct now. Besides the manual way, you can take an electronic version of a bill like a PDF, and you'll be able to import it. And the AI built into Sage Intacct will pre-populate the bill window for you. So it will specify the vendor and the document number and the date, the dollar amount. It will even try to code the bill correctly for you in Sage Intacct. The longer you use the product, the better it gets at doing that. It actually learns who your vendors are and what you typically charge them to, and it tracks that. And so it gets used to, especially your repeat vendors, it gets used to seeing them come in, and it knows what to populate and how to populate the data. Besides importing an electronic version, your users can also, your vendors can email you an invoice. And if they email it to a particular email address, it will show up in Sage Intacct. Now, whether you upload it or the vendor emails it, it's going to be in a draft mode. So it won't be posted. It'll be in a draft mode where you can go in and edit it, make any modifications you need to make, and then post it or submit it for approval. Here on this graphic in the bottom right-hand corner is an example of what the email addresses look like if you have multiple entities. So your vendors may be sending emails to or bills to your various different entities. The email addresses will be a combination of your organization name and the entity ID. So it knows which entity to add that particular bill to in draft mode. And I mentioned that you, the user, still have to post or submit it. So it's not actually, will not actually show up in your GL just yet. You still have to take some action, which means that you actually know what's actually going into your system. But since I mentioned submit for approval, I just wanted to just remind folks that Sage Intacct does have workflow for accounts payable. It is workflow for order entry, accounts payable, as well as purchasing. So if you want to use purchase orders and purchase requisitions and you know order entry where you have sales orders and sales invoices, it is workflow. And it also has just regular straight workflow for your accounts payable as well. And so when you're entering bills in the Sage Intacct and you have workflow turned on, when you create the bill, there's a submit button that's available to you instead of a post button. And when you submit it, it gets routed to an approver or approvers. And so let me show you what a bill like that looks like. So this bill here is one that I created earlier as a different user, and I submitted it. So it has a bill state of submitted. And then there's, in the history, it shows that it was created by Jacob Coleman, when it was created, who the vendor is. And then down here, it has who the approver is. It's T minor, but it has a state of submitted. A bill that has already been approved, the history will be just slightly different. It will say approved, and it will have who approved it and when they approved it. So it keeps an audit trail or track of who actually does the approving. And you can always see the status of a particular invoice. In terms of the approving, there's a configuration that you can go through, and it's a pretty cool, has some pretty cool options for you. The way that particular bill was routed was routed directly to a particular user. However, that doesn't have to be the case. It can be dynamic. So your other options are for AP approval or AP bill approval or value approvals. So value approvals means that I want to route this particular bill for approval based upon the dollar amount. So I can go in and I can create levels to control the routing. So if there's a value of $0 to $5,000, it's considered level 1. if it's 5,000 to 10, 5,001 cent to 10,000 level 2, etc. And so I can assign these levels to various users. And so anyone who is a level 1 user only would never get prompted to approve a transaction for $6,000. Only the level 2 or the level 2 users would actually get prompted for that. So that's one way you can do it. You can base it upon the value. Another option is the value approval transaction department. So it can look at not only the value, but it can also look at the department that the bill is coded to. So if it's coded to administration of human resources, and it's between $5,000 and $10,000, it can get routed to one person. But if it's coded to sales, and it's between $5,000 and $10,000, it can go to someone else. So you have those various options. There's a schema like this available not only in accounts payable, but also on the order entry side, as well as the purchasing side. So you have several options in terms of how the approvals work. And then of course, you can specify a specific user. So if someone, an accounting manager has to approve every single bill, then they could be an approver. You can have multiple steps in the approval process. So I can have a value approval, and then I can have the CFO look at the documents and approve them, or the accounting manager or the finance manager, what have you. So it doesn't have to be just one single approver. It can actually go through a hierarchy. And of course, if the first person declines it, then of course the second person never even sees it and is not bothered by it. So that's pretty much how the approvals work in a nutshell.
And Troy, I get asked a lot this question, and which is, what's the difference between, let's say, Sage Intacct approval or Sage Intacct workflow, to a solution like Bill.com?
So Bill.com, that's what it does. It works well with Sage Intacct, but their focus is specifically just on bills and AP workflow. It's a good tool. A lot of our clients like it, but a lot of our clients also like this product as well. I would tell clients, if you're thinking about automating accounts payable, take a look at the Bill.com product as well as the Sage Intacct product and see which one of them fits your needs and your budget as well. But both products are I believe, going to be going to help people in long term. The Bill.com automation has been around longer, which is a testament to its stability. But the Sage Intacct product, even though it's relatively new, they've learned some things by there already being a product out there on the market. So they learned some things to do and some things not to do. But I think they're both going to be great products for users.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I think Bill.com has, from a workflow perspective, has a lot more options. Because that's all it does is really AP automation, and then in addition, you're also outsourcing your payment process with Bill.com, meaning that you identify what bills that you want to pay, and you say, go ahead and pay it, and Bill.com sort of takes care of that. So you really don't need to either, cutting checks or processing generating the ACH file. So there are additional functionality that is provided with Bill.com.
And the other thing is, of course, with that, since you're not printing checks, your bank rec gets a little bit easier too, because when you go in with Bill.com and you specify the items to pay, from the Intacct perspective, it looks like a lump sum coming out of cash more so than all those individual items. So your bank rec gets a little bit easier too as well. The next item I'd like to take a look at to discuss is order entry. So order entry, for users who are using sales orders, historically, basically a sales order was basically almost like a placeholder to track who a customer is and what the customer wanted to buy. It's almost like a quote for the customer, really. And there really wasn't a transaction or any activity associated with it. What Sage Intacct has now done is added 2 additional fields to the order entry. It's in an early adopters phase. And what that means is there's some clients who are part of a program of Sage Intacct or early adopter. So when new functionality comes out that's not being rolled out to everyone, those in the early adopter programs actually get access to that functionality first. The 2 new fields are quantity reserved and quantity picked. So now if you populate quantity reserved and you're putting a sales order in, that quantity is no longer available for someone else to pull on another sales order. So it basically reserves those inventory items for you, even though they're still technically in the warehouse. No one else can actually sell those items. Quantity picked, though, communicates that even though it's still just a sales order, someone has actually gone to the warehouse and retrieved those items. So they're not even in the warehouse anymore. And again, they're not available for sale. That prevents, potentially an embarrassing situation where there's multiple sales orders for more than quantities available. This is an enhancement that a lot of users have requested and we're looking forward to, and it should be pretty helpful.
So we can take a second to just answer the third polling question.
Okay, the next item I wanted to let you know was going to be available is an integration with ADP Workforce Now. This is huge because now you can actually do payroll, or will be able to do payroll in Sage Intacct. It's, they didn't build it from the ground up. They reached out to the professionals. They reached out to ADP and they built an integration and collaborated with ADP. So now Sage Intacct now has what effectively is a payroll, HR and payroll module. It's fully integrated. And so, you know what the payroll process is. Of course, there may be some timekeeping involved. And then there's the calculation of payroll, where you calculate the employee's gross pay, all of their deductions, you calculate their net pay. Then you record your payroll liability, payday comes, the employees are actually paid. And then, of course, you have to get that payroll entry into your general ledger. With this new product, all of that stuff happens for you automatically. That payroll entry that you have to make at payday is already in your general ledger for you as a result of this new module. The HR piece has onboarding. It has some recruiting enhancements. When it comes to adding new employees, you can specify home dimensions for those employees. And these employee records are separate from the ones that you already have, because these employee records will have additional information in them, of course, about the various withholdings and deductions and state taxes that apply at the employee level and things like that. But it does communicate with the standard Sage Intacct employee dimension. For those of you who use time and expense, there is a field you're aware of what the employee labor cost is. So when you have this new HR module, whenever you update the employee cost in the HR module, it also gets updated in the dimension record for that employee as well. So you don't have to do double data entry. Also, if you're using time and expenses, HR and payroll will facilitate paying employees for their expense reports through ADP. So it's basically a 360 view of 360 process of actually getting the expense reports processed and paid. So the expense reports are entered into Sage Intacct, posted, reviewed, and when you're ready to pay them, the appropriate information is transmitted to ADP. ADP makes the payment, and a record is sent back to Sage Intacct to show that those particular expense reports were paid. So if you're paying employees through, accounts payable or some other method, if you have to manually go into your payroll system to pay employees for the expense reports, this product will help alleviate that issue. And again, it's full payroll. It's, you know, calculating payroll, paying your employees, tracking their benefits. It has a self-service component to it, recruitment. It helps you with your tax filings, the whole nine. So it's a pretty big deal. And again, Sage Intacct engaged with ADP because of ADP's history in that area. So if you're interested in taking a look at that, please let us know.
Just a quick comment on this. So ADP does have more than one solution. So this is with ADP Workforce Now, because they have a lower end version for Run. And then, you know, the ADP been doing integrations with Sage Intacct. The integration is actually not part of the core products. There's a fee to leverage the integration, but you know, at least the integration's there. And you know, if you have a fairly good size organization with, you know, a good number of employee, this integration, if you're already on ADP Workforce Now, this integration may be worth looking at.
Great, thank you. The excuse me, the next item I wanted to show you in the product is what's called columns in motion. You may have seen this on one of the previous releases. They've made some enhancements to it, and they've also expanded it. It is technically still in beta, but they're starting to roll it out a little bit more. So some of you may actually see it and some of you may not. But they have made a point to get it out there because it seems to be pretty popular. So it's a little different. The view looks a little different. There's a little more activity here on the filter bar, excuse me. But what it allows you to do, as you know, you can create multiple views with the current Sage Intacct product. You can add columns when you kind of have to go into Wizard to do so. With this particular enhancement, you don't have to actually create the new view. You can choose configure columns, and it will show you the other columns that are available to add to this particular view. So if I scroll down and I want to add, let's see a good thing to add. If I want to add whether or not a vendor is on hold, I can add that. If it's a one-time vendor, if there are any comments on the vendor record, if there's some ACH or the vendor's account number information, and I can click apply. And it adds those columns for me automatically. So I don't have to any longer actually go into the wizard to actually create a brand new view from scratch or modify an existing view. The other enhancement here is what's called advanced filtering. So one of the columns here is the current amount that's totally due from a vendor. If I click on this filter here, I can say I want to see a list of vendors where the amount due is greater than $1,000. And so it comes back and it gives me that list. And then, of course, if I want to drill into that information, I can do so directly from there. So this functionality, and here it's showing me all the open invoices. So this functionality here is called columns in motion. One of the other things that I can do here is create this split screen here. So as I go from vendor to vendor, I actually get the information regarding the vendor on this second screen here. And from a maintenance perspective, this is fantastic because I can see, of course, the vendor's contact information, the other additional information, the contact list. And I get this question a lot about contact lists. Why are there multiple items here for contacts? One of the reasons that this is here is so that you can have multiple contacts or multiple addresses for each of your vendors. And a good example would be, for example, Verizon. Verizon has an address where you remit payments to, but if you want to send Verizon a letter, it has a different correspondence address, and it may be a third address for Verizon headquarters. You can have multiple addresses for a particular vendor in Sage Intacct. Another use for this is if you have a vendor that has multiple locations or multiple branches, and you actually want to use this to basically direct which location the bill is for, which branch is for. I can also quickly get to the payment information here. So again, for maintaining the vendor and updating the vendor, this split screen is great. Here we can specify any banking information. So if the vendor has agreed to be paid via ACH, which I highly recommend, by the way, then you can set up the vendor's information here. For those of you who are logging into, say, banking portals and basically doing wires, clients are finding that ACH is the better way to go because it typically is cheaper per transaction by a whole lot. And vendors are usually pretty open to receiving their payment via ACH. Also, mentioning ACH, there's a new option. It's called a SEPA file, SEPA, and a file format. So if you're sending international payments out that you need to send them out via ACH, that file format is now available, and I believe that's required like in Ireland and a few other places, but that has become available as well. And let's see.
And Troy, maybe comment on the difference between the view and the filter, because this view has been around for forever, and this is new.
Right. So the filter here, this is called advanced filtering here. Advanced filtering, and so you can of course apply multiple filters to the various columns. Whereas you can't filter as the filtering for the regular view is not as sophisticated. And I'll switch back to that in a second. And again, you have the split screen when you revert to this view of the interface. You also have the ability to drag and drop columns. If I turn off the beta, and I go back to this view, here, you can still do some filtering, but the filtering is not as sophisticated. For example, you can't filter on the total amount due here. You can sort by it, but you can't filter on it. And if you want to add additional columns here, basically you can select a new view or an existing view or create a new one. If you wanted to create a new view, you would go to create new view. And by the way, this is the way it's done in all the view screens. You create new view. You select the fields, and there could be a lot of them depending on what the object or area is that you want to show. It's a wizard, and it takes you step by step through. Here you can select the order of the columns for your output. So if you want the vendor name to come before the vendor ID, you just move vendor name up. The next step is to filter. So you can hard code some filters in here. So you can actually make a view where the total due is greater than $1,000. So when you actually go to that view, you only see those particular records. So I'll put one there. But again, that's hard coded in there. So the only thing that view is ever going to show you is vendors who have a balance of $1,000 or more.
But it is also stored. You're also storing this and not having to find this every time. If that's what you want each time, this might be a better option for you.
That is correct. Here's where you specify how you want to sort your results, and you can change how you sort when you actually generate the view. But here you can actually sort it in advance. So if you want to sort by the vendor name, you can choose ascending. And then, of course, on the last step, you have to give the viewer name. And you save it, and you have created a new view. And then it shows up here in the drop down, and I can select TM vendors. And so it presents that view to me. Again, I can sort this data from the view here. And I can also, do filtering as well. here. If I want to see all the vendors in New York, I can filter here as well, but I can do the same thing with the beta interface of the columns in motion as well. I think there's going to be some additional enhancements added to the beta interface, but right now you can toggle between the two products. So those are the enhancements that we thought would be useful to you guys for this particular release. Of course, there's going to be future enhancements in R1, 2, 3, and 4 in 2023, and we'll be having some webinars for those as well. I don't think I saw any questions come through, but if you guys have any questions for us, please feel free to reach out to us, and I will turn it back over to Buu-Linh.
Great, thank you so much. Next slide, please.
Let's go to get you down to.
So we're getting close to the end of the year. So we have one more webinar for December, and that is focused primarily in the manufacturing distribution, wholesale distribution industry. It's for budgeting success in the manufacturing distribution industry. It's on December the 20th. And if you are interested, you know, there's a URL at the bottom here. You can just go to our Marcum events and register for that webinar. And then early in 2023, we're getting ready for year end. And so we have two webinars. These are the two solutions I mentioned, one of the two that we support, Sage Intacct and as well as Dynamics GP. So you've got the dates there. We will be going through what organizations go through for year end. So definitely cover 1099 and as well as year end close. So depending on the organizations, not everyone is calendar year, but you know, we'll go through the whole process. And so, you know, if you're not calendar year, you can take that information and apply it when, you know, when it's a fiscal year end for you. So, so that's pretty much it. Just wanted to thank everyone for attending the webinar. I hope that it was helpful to you. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. I think the next slide is our contact, Troy. Yeah, feel free to reach out to us, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you so much. Thank you, Troy, and thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.